And we're back to live election returns here on Granbury TV. I'm Kevin Myers, and I'm joined by the 355th District Judge, Judge Ralph Walton, who just happens to be home base here in Granbury, Texas.
There you go.
And
good to see you, Kevin.
Good to see you too, Judge. Just your thoughts in general about today and the turnout and the numbers that you've seen just driving through town and seeing people voting.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a great night in terms of the turnout, and has been, I think, since early voting started. I voted early myself back last week, I guess, and stood in line 30 minutes then to do it on a Tuesday afternoon, and I would have thought that it would not be that long of a line, but it looks like there's going to be a great turnout, and of course we got a long night ahead of us too. It looks like before all these races are decided, especially at the national level. But that's good when the folks turn out like they have, and I don't know if it'll be record numbers. I haven't seen that really to know how that's going to all play out, but it's definitely encouraging because in the United States, I think in recent years we've suffered from a lot of apathy, and hopefully that's going to turn around this year. We'll see a little different in the level of participation by our citizens.
And Judge, you talk about the apathy in the vote, and I think in Texas over the last couple of years there's been a movement to deal with not necessarily apathy as a word, but voter fatigue. We asked our voters to vote in a municipal election in May, and then vote for a general election, also in a primaries, and in constitutional amendment elections too. So we had several different elections all in one calendar year, and there was a movement to change that. This is the first time that everybody's voting on a unified date in November. So I think that has helped with the people getting out to vote to say, yes, I'm going to go vote, and I don't have to vote again this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. Definitely, consolidating some of those elections into one, it was an excellent idea for that very reason. People can turn out and vote on all those important races, but do it on a single date, and I think that's an excellent idea that whose time has come, and so I think that will certainly enhance, hopefully over the years, if we continue to do it like that, enhance the turnouts. But when you only have 10% show up for a primary election and they determine the outcome of the races, that's really not very representative of the citizens and of the registered voters. So it's a great thing when you can get more people participating in the process. That's what it's all about. If you don't vote, you can't complain.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, and another thing I want to talk to you about, we are full on electronic voting, and I'm not trying to date you at all, Judge, but you have been running races since before electronic voting, and so how do you think?
Never saw any hanging chads, though,
man.
No,
never any hanging chads. But how has the experience for the voter changed through time as going from paper voting to now what we do electronic voting? I thought it was going to be a big problem, but really I think we've made the transition well.
Well, we've become such an electronic-oriented society, in all aspects, the use of computers and all that. I think, the overwhelming majority of Americans are into that process and that way of just living their lives with electronics. And so, I think it is a great thing that we have moved into that area with all of our elections, and it's just a very efficient way of casting a ballot, and and speeding up the process too. I think of the voting and the counting, and just much more reliable than the old paper ballots. And of course we saw that a lot in Florida back in 2000. The problems with the hanging chads and all that was a huge problem in determining the outcome of individual votes. So I think it's a great thing. I think it's the wave of the future, and if it's not being played out in every state in the union, it will be.
Yeah. Judge, you and I talked earlier in the week about one of the other underlying themes of this election cycle, and that is the fact that we're going to have several elections tonight that we as the citizens of Hood County are going to determine, but yet we may see a different person in the chair when it's all said and done with, and that has to do with redistricting. Mm-hmm. and the fact that redistricting is something that we are subject to in Hood County, and your thoughts on redistricting and how that plays in.
Right. Of course, redistricting is a thing that we undergo in this country every 10 years after the census. Every 10 years we have to redistrict in the state house, state senate, and congressional districts based upon the change in population. Of course, in this first 10 years of the 21st century, Texas grew by some 20%, as a result of which we will have 4 new congressional seats. And of course, under our law, the Texas legislature is the body that is charged with the responsibility of redistricting at the end of every 10 years based on the census. And of course, that the state Senate, the state House can each propose new boundaries based upon that census. And if they can agree on something, then of course that will become law. But there is a problem, and that problem is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Section 5 thereof, that requires all changes in the voting districts in the state of Texas and other southern states be submitted for pre-clearance through the federal district court in Washington, D.C. And so what happened, quite frankly, this year is that or not this year, 2011, during the season then, the state legislature was unable to come up with a decision on that was approved, and in fact, the circuit court, the district court out of D.C. struck down the Texas legislature's plan, and then it fell through the legal process on a federal court in San Antonio. They drafted new boundaries, and then that was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. And then that was in earlier this year, and then a district court again in Washington D.C. After the Supreme Court had struck down what had been done by the San Antonio court, that district court then struck that down. So the end result of it all was that in September of this year, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that Texas could go forward with its elections based upon that plan that had been drafted by the San Antonio federal court. But like you point out, we don't know whether that's in the final analysis going to be what will prevail. It may be that will change, but the U.S. Supreme Court said we could go ahead and go forward with the elections based upon the plan that the San Antonio court had come up with. But it's just a complicated mess, all complicated, of course, certainly by the change of population, the increase of the 4 additional seats that Texas has, and obviously the Democrats and Republicans both wanting a shot at those seats. And so it creates a lot of activity, especially in the courtrooms. Yeah,
well, and Judge, we certainly appreciate in Hood County having somebody with the experience and the wherewithal to be able to represent our needs and wants in your job as the 355th district judge. I know that it is your responsibility to hear all criminal cases in Hood County. And what else is it that you do besides that for us?
District courts are the principal trial courts in Texas. They've been in existence since the Republic, 1836. Sam Houston signed a bill creating the first 3, and there are 450 now, some 160 or 70 years later. So I have a trial court. We try civil, felony, criminal, family, juvenile, just basically the full gamut, what's called a general jurisdiction court. In the cities you'll have specialized courts that hear nothing but family law or hear nothing but criminal or nothing but civil. But out here in the hinterlands, we have we have general jurisdiction. That means I get to hear it all, brothers. Yeah. That's what it means.
Have you ever sat and presided over who owns these chickens or not?
Exactly. You'd be amazed at what people fight over. And usually it's not chickens; it's maybe dogs and cats. But nonetheless, yes, that's a common thing. But yes, in the district court of Hood County, we hear it all. But what occupies the bulk of our time, quite frankly, is the criminal docket. We try lots of criminal cases throughout the course of a year, and many jury trials. We don't try that many civil jury trials anymore because arbitration, mediation has taken over in that area, and most cases get resolved through arbitration or mediation, but not so in the criminal area, obviously.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time tonight, Judge, and glad to have you here. And we're going to go to Shanna, and she's going to give us the breakdown of the ballot tonight and how everything's going to come. And I think we're pretty close to getting our early returns coming back. So anyway, with that, we'll give it over to Shanna Smith.
Thank you, Kevin.